Hi, kids. Monday, happy Monday. I didn't read on Friday because I feel like a lot of people need to catch up to, I read 23, 22 and 23 on Thursday. So, and then the question I asked was, chapter 22, what is going on? Where is Edward? It's the only chapter, it's actually the same picture at the front of the chapter that's on the front of the book. And if you listen to it, he's wearing a red silk suit and he's walking. So, what is this? It says it was dusk. Edward was walking down a sidewalk. He didn't have assistance from anybody. He walked and then he went inside and he was back at Abeline's house. So, and then all the characters were there. There was Lucy the dog, there was Bull, there was Nellie calling him Susanna, there was Bryce calling him Jangles, there was Abeline calling him Edward, and then Bryce said, "Are you looking for Sarah Ruth?" So I asked the question, what did this remind you of in another Kate D. Camilo book? And to me, I think there was the scene where, because before this scene, Edward's head got cracked, remember? I think it was the scene where Louisiana was almost drowning in that pond in Rainy Nightingale. And remember, she was going up like towards an angel, or she saw the blue fairy from Pinocchio, and then people were pulling her. So it was kind of like a similar thing. He was about to fly, and remember, he had those dreams of flying. So then Bull is the one who grabbed hold of Edward's feet, pulled him out of the sky, and wrestled him to the earth. "You can't go yet," said Bull. "Stay with us," said Abeline. And then Edward started to cry, and Lucy licked his tears away. So that was the end of 22. And then he ended up in chapter 23, where he's in a doll hospital. So he says his head was broken. We know that. This is Lucius Clark. And he says, so Lucius Clark says, I wrote the word exceedingly for this chapter. So he talks about how dirty he is. It's a surpassingly, unbelievably work of art. He says, "You're a work of art." And then he says, "Oh, you were brought back, all modesty," let's forget exceedingly because I can't find it. He says, "All modesty aside." So when he says I'm not trying to be modest. So he's saying he's trying to say he's a really great doll maker, but he doesn't want to brag. And then he says, you've been pulled back by the brink of oblivion. So the brink means when you're standing on the edge of something, and oblivion is like olvidar, when you forget something. So he was brought back by the void, the abyss. And actually he was, because remember he was trying to go to heaven, which could be seen as oblivion. And then he says, so it's like a rescue thing again. So here's this guy rescuing him. So he's laying on the bench. He says, "I'm a businessman, blah, 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 blah." Bryce sacrificed his own happiness to give Edward to the doll minder. So then chapter 24, we see the picture of Bryce. So here we go. "And so Edward Tulane was mended, put together again, cleaned and polished, dressed in an elegant suit, and placed on a high shelf for display. From the shelf, Edward could see the whole shop, Lucius Clark's workbench, and the windows to the outside world, and the door that the customers used to enter and leave. From this shelf, Edward saw Bryce open the door one day and stand in the threshold, again on the edge, on the brink, the silver harmonica in his left hand flashing brilliantly in the sunlight flooding in through the windows. 'Young sir,' said Lucius, 'I am afraid that we made a deal.' 'Can't I see him?' asked Bryce. He wiped his hand across his nose, and the gesture filled Edward with a terrible feeling of love and loss. 'I just want to look at him.' Lucius Clark sighed. 'You may look,' he said. 'You may look, and then you must go and not come back. I cannot have you in my shop every day mooning over what you have lost.' 'Yes, sir,' said Bryce. So this is the picture when he's saying that. So there's Bryce there's Edward all fancy again with new ears and new everything and new clothes. Lucius sighed again. He got up from his workbench and went to Edward's shelf and picked him up and held him so that Bryce could see him. 'Hey, Jangles,' said Bryce, 'you look good. The last time I seen you, you looked terrible. Your head was busted in and he is put together again, said Lucius, as I promised you he would be. Bryce nodded. He wiped his hand across his nose. Can I hold him? He asked. No, said Lucius. Bryce nodded again. Tell him goodbye, said Lucius Clark. He is repaired. He has been saved. Now you must tell him goodbye. Goodbye, said Bryce. Don't go, thought Edward. I won't be able to bear it if you go. And now you must leave, said Lucius Clark. Yes, sir, said Bryce, but he stood without moving, looking at Edward. Go, said Lucius Clark. Go. Please, thought Edward, don't. Bryce turned. He walked through the door of the doll mender's shop. The door closed. The bell tinkled. And Edward was alone. Then here is a picture of, on the chapter 25 page. Do you remember back in the very first chapter, Edward loathed dolls because they chattered nonsensically and said lots of things. They bothered him, they annoyed him. So here we go. Technically, of course, he was not alone. Lucius Clark's shop was filled with dolls. Lady dolls and baby dolls, dolls with eyes that opened and closed, and dolls with painted-on eyes, dolls dressed as queens, and dolls wearing sailor suits. Edward had never cared for dolls, remember? He found them annoying and self-centered, twittery and vain. This opinion was immediately reinforced by his first shelf-mate, a china doll with green glass eyes and red lips and dark brown hair. She was wearing a green satin dress that fell to her knees. What are you? She said in a high-pitched voice when Edward was placed on the shelf next to her. I am a rabbit, said Edward. Ah! The doll let out a small squeak. You're in the wrong place, she said. This is a shop for dolls, not rabbits. Edward said nothing. Shoo! Said the doll. I would love to shoo, said Edward, but it is obvious that I cannot. After a long silence, the doll said, I hope you don't think that anyone is going to buy you. Again, Edward said nothing. The people who come in here want dolls, not rabbits. They want baby dolls or elegant dolls such as myself. Dolls with pretty dresses, dolls with eyes that open and closed. I have no interest in being purchased, said Edward. The doll gasped. You don't want somebody to buy you? She said, you don't want to be owned by a little girl who loves you? Sarah Ruth, Abilene. Their names went through Edward's head like the notes of a sad, sweet song. I have already been loved, said Edward. I have been loved by a girl named Abilene. I have been loved by a fisherman and his wife and a hobo and his dog. I have been loved by a boy who played the harmonica and by a girl who died. Don't talk to me about love. He said, I have known love. This impassioned speech shut up Edward's shelfmate for a considerable amount of time. Well, she said at last, still, my point is that no one is going to buy you. They did not speak to each other again. The doll was sold 2 weeks later to a grandmother who was purchasing her for a grandchild. Yes, she said to Lucius Clark, that one right there, the one with the green dress. She is quite lovely. Yes, said Lucius, she is, isn't she? And he plucked the doll from the shelf. Huh, goodbye and good riddance, thought Edward. The spot next to the rabbit stayed vacant for some time. Day after day, the door to the shop opened and closed, letting in early morning sun or late afternoon light, lifting the hearts of the dolls inside, all of them thinking, when the door swung wide open this time, the person entering the shop would be the one who wanted them. Edward was the lone contrarian. He prided himself on not hoping, on not allowing his heart to lift inside of him. He prided himself on keeping his heart silent, immobile, closed tight. I'm done with hope, thought Edward, Tulane. And then, one day at dusk, right before he closed the shop, Lucius Clark placed another doll on the shelf next to Edward. And there is the new doll. So, what you can do in your comments, and please make comments, I beg of you. You can put I mean, it says he was done with hope, and then right before he closed the shop, Lucifer said, that makes you think. What does that make you think about the doll? Will it be another vain, arrogant, mean doll like the one who got sold in the green dress, or will it be a nice? To me, the way this doll looks, she looks nice, but we'll see tomorrow when we read chapter 26 and chapter 27. Oh my God, tomorrow is the last day of the book. So make sure you catch up so you can hear the end. Bye-bye.